The morning sun painted the familiar scene as it gently moved through the windows of the Duggar residence. Hardwood floors. The images of holidays, reunions, and festivities that adorned the walls evoked a sense of peaceful life, a frozen echo of love and happiness. The remarkable serenity captured in Jason Duggar's childhood photos made them stand out. A dreamer, a thoughtful young guy whose soul was constantly on the verge of reflection. Jason got up early as usual since he always liked to enjoy the calm before the house woke up. He dressed, brewed a cup of coffee, and then sat by the window for a while, watching the horizon light up with the morning. He had been looking forward to today, a day that may provide him freedom, wisdom, and perhaps even a glimpse of the life he wished to design outside the boundaries of his house. He climbed into his car. The engines hummed warmly and familiarly beneath his fingertips. His inner mix of calm and restlessness was reflected in the soft music that permeated the cabin. The road ahead twisted like a ribbon, winding past meadows and hills lit by the early morning light. As he drove, a fleeting, fragile silence fell between the countryside and his thoughts of long-suppressed dreams and familial responsibilities. It felt as though time was passing slowly. With the sun moving across the sky and the wind whispering through the open windows, the world outside seemed to stretch on forever. Jason's heart is full of excitement and his mind is full of possibilities. The air was calm and warm, yet there was a faint, almost imperceptible strain about it. A glimpse of the future that he could not see or feel. Then it came suddenly, clearly, and irrevocably. A slight change at the side of the road and a fleeting glimpse of something crossing the road caused Jason to instinctively swing the wheel. The slippery pavement caused the tires to slide. A powerful fish tailed past the truck. Glass rattled, metal groaned, and there was a low, dreadful rumble. Time seemed to stop at those moments. Time seemed to pause with each pulse. The delicate morning peace was broken when the truck struck the barrier, sending metal fragments flying through the air and then crashing into a big tree. The glass shards gleamed in the sunlight like rough diamonds as they broke apart. The engine roared and then went silent, sending plumes of smoke flying into the sky as if the ground were to moan in horror. The finality of the situation set in after a brief period of quiet during which he appeared to accept everything as it was. Outside, it seemed as though nothing had occurred. The fields and trees and far-off hills saw the sudden and permanent change. The sky was filled with a rich red and golden glow as the sun began to set. In the silence that followed, an incredibly beautiful setting. The family carried on with their journey, miles away, unaware of the catastrophe. There is laughing and normal talk throughout the home, despite the disaster outside. But in that one quiet moment on the empty road, something changed. A life that had been full of love, ambition, and hope had come to an unimaginable stop. The truck lay motionless against the tree, a fragile monument to all that had been and all that would never be. The song, a ghostly echo of the past, whispered quietly from the broken stereo, a melody torn between memory and grief. Time continued to pass in different directions. The hopeful day came to an end there by the side of the road in a profound silence that seemed to last forever. Everything Jason Duggar had left behind, including his life and the world that would now only exist in his thoughts, was still there as a memory, a brittle and unachievable reminder of the calm, the brightness, and the quiet. Painfully quiet now, the familiar corridors of the Duggar household were warmed by warm, golden rays of late afternoon sunbeams. For hours, the house had gone about its daily business as usual. Household chores, entertainment, and conversation. However, a certain unease had begun to permeate the mood. There was a persistent sense that no one could identify. A mother's intuition, a brief panic attack, the knowledge that something was wrong. A straightforward idea that Michelle Duggar had in her head had served as the impetus. Jason had left early that morning and promised to be back by now. At a steady pace, everything in the house had gone on as usual. Still, a tinge of expectancy had begun to creep in. When she looked at her phone and realized that there were no messages or replies, a shot of uneasiness went through her. Time seemed to drag on for a minute. Every second seemed to drag out interminably, and the rooms were filled with a tight, oppressive quiet. The siblings who used to joke and mock each other now sat quietly and anxiously, peering at the windows and doors with a worried expression, as if the sound of Jason's truck engine could ease the growing tension. Every missed call, text, and ring that remained unanswered increased the sense of unease and added a layer of worry that no one dared to express. The sky outside was beginning to darken, and the sun's brightness was becoming a muted, sorrowful gray. The clouds moved slowly across the horizon, like the weight on everyone's hearts within the house. Time seemed to have stopped. Everywhere you looked was a flashback to Jason, his laughter, his introspective looks, and the quiet moments by the window, a soft warmth that has hitherto gone unacknowledged. Everyone was affected by that absence, even though it was difficult to see. The first caller was a buddy who gave news that seemed incomprehensible in a shaky, weak voice. The words themselves bounced from the barriers of unbelief, too frightening to absorb all at once. Ruthless and cruel. An accident, a truck, Jason, and the side of the road. Abruptly, the whole house felt a weight that was almost palpable. A genuine sadness that hurt the heart, weighed on the lungs, and stopped time. The brightness of earlier hours, the laughing, and the basic ordinariness of life disappeared like mist under the glaring light of tragedy. The mother's father's siblings are among those whose reality is in doubt. It was difficult to understand, even though the nightmare was so real. Michelle's heart constricted and the agony in her chest grew unbearable. She remembered watching him get up every morning. It was all worthwhile because of her guiding words and the warm smiles she received. Consider a future in which you never again see him, hear his voice, or notice his nuanced humor. Sent a constant tidal wave of fascinating revelations her way. She sank into a chair, her hands quivering and her mind racing through regrets, prayers, and priceless but pointless moments. My recollections all turned into jagged edges that served as a continual reminder of how unstable life might be. Every sibling had a unique response. Some of them stood frozen in confusion, as though he could return if he stared intently at the walls. Some started to pace because the silence was too much for them. Tears were running down the faces of those who were slowly sinking, mourning the loss of what may have been. Each family member's response was intricate and interconnected, resulting in a common grief that was also highly unique. Time seemed to go on and on. The room echoed with rumors of what had happened, desperate attempts to confirm details, tidbits of questionable information, and calls to the police. Even worse, none of it helped to alleviate the uncertainty. The road, the car, the accident, everything seemed both far and uncannily near. A ghostly presence hiding behind every action. The night fell, slow and unrelenting. Once a place of laughter and happiness, the house was now a crucible of strong emotions. Every small sound, such as the distant bark of a dog, the hum of the refrigerator, or the snap of a floorboard, seemed to be amplified in the minds of those who waited in the hopes of hearing news. Conversely, hope appeared to be an extremely thin, almost delicate thread. Each person was forced to face their own anxieties, memories, and the situation's facts. Even the little things of the day, like the breakfast crumbs on the table, the untied shoes, and the unfinished laundry, became unbearably depressing. Recollections of the disturbed schedule, of the individual whose presence was no longer welcomed. Jason's chuckle, his quiet smile, his thoughtful gaze. At the same time, these things were terrible and valuable. Now, an unbearable grief tainted even the most vivid memories. Time passed, unconcerned and unrelenting, but every heartbeat meant a lifetime in the Duggar household. The passing of time seemed to go on forever. The anguish and expectation that accumulated over the hours were unbearable. The family held on to one another in ways that were both instinctive and dreadfully inadequate. With each grip, breath, and tear, the universe was silently urged to reverse the damage. However, nothing could undo the change in the tide. All of a sudden, a life so full of promise was destroyed. Outside, people carried on in utter ignorance. Stars glowed through the descending sky, leaves swayed in the breeze, and the distant hum of traffic continued its low, continuous hum. On the inside, however, time had shattered. A life full of dreams, joy, and hopes had been put on hold, leaving a void that would last into the night. Every sound, every thought, every heartbeat, everything that the outer world was unable to absorb, seemed to permeate the melancholy house. So the night continued on. Every happy moment, hope, and memory got entwined with loss. The family had come to terms with a new reality, one that was bonded by both love and grief. Then everything would be different.